Hey guys, it's Nicole. I'm back with another video, and today is going to be about a book. Like I did in the previous video about a book, this is going to be not exactly one of my favorite books. I didn't hate this book. I don't have super negative feelings towards it. It's just, there was something about it that just wasn't my favorite. Like, it didn't hit right, like so many of the other videos that I've made about books were because I found something that I really loved in those books, and that's why I wanted to make a video about them. But these books are kind of like, there was just something about them that was a little off that bothered me for some reason. And I like to talk about those too, because I think all of those kinds of books are worth talking about. So this is one that I got because I read another book by this author back when I was in high school, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I mean, even though I had to read it for English class, like, I still really liked it a lot. At least I remember liking it. This was a long time ago. I think I was maybe a sophomore in high school when I read this book, so it's been around 10 years, 11 years or so. So I thought, hey, I loved that author then. I really enjoyed that book then. I want to read another one of his books because he is a very classic American author. And so I thought to myself, let's go ahead and do it. So the book that I read that I'll be talking about today is Something Wicked This Way Comes. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate this book at all. I really don't. I actually am really glad I read it. I think that it's good to read perspectives that are very, very different from yours. And men's perspectives are always going to be different than mine because I'm not a man. And so I really, really liked reading this, even though there's just something about it that was like not my favorite. So the book, obviously, that I read back in high school was Fahrenheit 451, which it says author Fahrenheit 451. And I really enjoyed that book back then. And so I wanted to read this one because I've heard so much about it. I've heard things kind of named after this book, but like a parody because it's such a classic. So as a classic, I wanted to read it for myself and see what it was like. So I honestly do love the cover, and not knowing anything about the book going into it, the cover really caught my eye. It's so simple, just a few colors. I don't know if this is the original cover because this is not a new book, so this is a re-release, so I don't know what the original cover looked like, if it was different. But first glance, when you're looking at it and you don't really know anything about the book at all, it does feel a little, what's the word I'm looking for, like a carnival, I guess, like the white and red stripes along the edges, and the way the words, like the font, the size, like the way it's like spread out, like it just kind of gave off those whimsical, is the word I was looking for, vibes from it, and definitely sounds right up my alley. So I'm gonna read the back of the book. If you're watching this video and you've already read this book, you probably know exactly what it's about and you know all of this stuff, but I'm sure there's other people out there like me who had never read this book. So I'm going to read the back anyways. So it starts with, for those who still dream and remember, for those yet to experience the hypnotic power of its dark poetry, step inside. The show is about to begin. Cougar and Dark's Pandemonium Shadow Show has come to Greentown, Illinois, to destroy every life touched by its strange and sinister mystery. The carnival rolls in sometime after midnight, ushering in Halloween a week early. A calliope's shrill siren song beckons to all with a seductive promise of dreams and youth regained. Two boys will discover the secret of its smoke, mazes, and mirrors. Two friends who will soon know all too well the heavy cost of wishes and the stuff of nightmares. So that's basically the synopsis. The rest of the book, on the back of the book, is just kind of what other authors think of it, basically. So it's very vague, Obviously, it kind of sounds like the carnival's come to town based on what the back says. It doesn't call it a carnival. It calls it Shadow Show It's Cougar and Dark's Pandemonium Shadow Show. And then, okay, the Carnival Rosen. It does call it a carnival, excuse me. It's a carnival. And so clearly the book is going to be about two boys. And it's still very vague, like stuff of dreams and youth, but then there's also the cost of the heavy wishes and the stuff of nightmares, which when I hear that, it really brings me back to, is it The Monkey's Paw? I don't know. It's a story, short story. I think it's Stephen King. I could be totally wrong, but I read it in a class, middle school, maybe high school. And I found that so interesting because we all think about what we would wish for if we could have wishes. And The Monkey's Paw is kind of about this, wishes and the consequences of those wishes, because I don't know, it's always interesting in how we do things in fiction and like mythological like stories, how it's very you can't get wishes without something else happening, you know, in the midst of that. And so I just realized I forgot to turn my ceiling fan off, so I'm gonna fix that real quick. And I'm back. You almost didn't know I left. The magic of editing. I do this in my room, so I have a ceiling fan that's on, especially as we're getting into the hotter months of the year. So, the back of the book, like I said, doesn't give off a lot, but it does talk about wishes, and it does talk about the consequences of those wishes. And it's interesting how when we write as humans, when we write stuff about wishes, there always has to be consequences involved. It can never just be, you get your wish, happy ever after. And it's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. I don't really have any thoughts on it. I just thought it was a fascinating kind of point about this. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first page of the book. There's been no spoilers so far, obviously, and once I get into the part where I start talking about spoilers, I will make it very clear. That way, if you don't want spoilers because you've never read the book, you don't have to go into that. But I am going to read the first page because, again, I think that there's probably a lot of people who have never read this book. I mean, you know, when you're older, you're like, well, how could someone have never read this book? It's a classic. Like, it's been around forever. It's like, yeah, but there's so many books, so many movies, so many everything, that there's probably a good amount of people that have never, ever even heard of this. So this is the prologue. So I'm gonna read the first page of the prologue. The prologue's literally a page and a quarter. It's a very short little prologue, but I'll read the first page of it. First of all, it was October, a rare month for boys. Not that all months aren't rare, but there be bad and good, as the pirates say. Take September, a bad month. School begins. Consider August, a good month. School hasn't begun yet. July, well, July is really fine. There's no chance in the world for school. June, no doubting it, June's best of all, for the school doors spring wide and September's a billion years away. But you take October now. School's been on a month and you're riding easier in the rains, jogging along. You got time to think of the garbage you'll dump on Old Man Prickett's porch, or the hairy ape costume you'll wear to the YMCA the last night of the month. And if it's around October 20th and everything's smoky smelling and the sky orange and ash gray at twilight, it seems Halloween will never come in a fall of broomsticks and a soft flap of bed sheets around corners. But one strange, wild, dark, long year, Halloween came early. One year, Halloween came on October 24th, 3 hours after midnight. At that time, James Nightshade of 97 Oak Street was 13 years, 11 months, 23 days old. There's another sentence, but it continues into the next page, and I'm not going to go that far because I only do the first page. So, it does sound mysterious because it suddenly says Halloween came early on October 24th, and that's not how things work at all. October and Halloween are always the same. Halloween always comes on October 31st. So it's interesting. Definitely kind of alludes to some kind of supernatural element involved, for sure. It doesn't really specify, but I think it kind of alludes to that, so you can kind of guess going on later into the book that there are some kind of supernatural overarching themes. And it's just very mysterious. And obviously, you know, not from my perspective at all, because it is about two boys. I've never been a boy, so I think I tend to read books that are from a perspective that I can relate to, so this was definitely a little bit something different than I would normally read, and I'm really, really glad I read it. It wasn't at all what I was expecting, let me put it that way. I had read the back cover before I read it, and like I said, it doesn't really give off much. Like, it just gives you the carnival that comes in and changes everything, but that's kind of it. Like, it just leaves everything to your imagination until you can get into the book, which I think is the point. I think the whole point of the book is kind of, a lot of it's left up to your imagination, because if you've read it, or once you read it, you'll kind of see why I say that. And that's just what I think. I think that the back of the book kind of alludes to being very mysterious and leaving your imagination run wild, and I think that's what the book kind of is about, like the point, at least. So why was this not one of my favorite books? Well, I definitely enjoyed it because the entire time I was reading it, I was very invested. I was like, okay, what is with this carnival? What is going to happen? Whose life is changing like crazy? The stuff of nightmares, because wishes are happening, things are going to happen. It's very mysterious. The boys are like so curious. And like the boys, I was super curious. I was like, okay, be careful, because this seems very evil, but I don't know. I really, really wanted to find out what was going to happen. And, you know, there's two boys and they kind of have very opposite personalities. One is very much the cautious, stay on the safe side of things. The other is run towards danger because I need to know what's happening. And you get those two sides of basically the same coin, because they're both boys that are the same age, growing up in the same era in the same small town. And I don't know what the exact reason was that I didn't like this. All I can say is, to me, it felt like the entire book was just really trying to be one big metaphor. You know, because like on the back of the book, it mentions promise of youth regained. And with the boys being the main characters, there's other stuff obviously that happens that I'm not going to say right now because this is the non-spoiler part, but it just felt like the entire book was just one big metaphor that was really drawn out. Because this is not a huge book, as you can see. It's kind of, I'd say in the mid section. I tend to read books about this thick, but at the same time, you know, there's other books that are much thinner. So obviously it's a long book. Like, it's, how many pages is it after all? You know, my point is, it felt like it was really drawn out. It's not a bad thing to have an entire book be essentially a metaphor, or to represent something of life that we all, in some capacity, experience. Because I like that kind of stuff. I think there's a good reason for writing things that are like that. But I guess because it just felt so drawn out, it felt like this book just beats a dead horse by the time you get to the end. I'm like, okay, I get it now. Can we just get to the end? Like, do we ever find out where this carnival, like what everything is? And, you know, there's other books that are much thinner. So obviously it's a long book. Like, it's, how many pages is it after all? And, you know, my point is, it felt like it was really drawn out. It's not a bad thing to have an entire book be essentially a metaphor, or to represent something of life that we all, in some capacity, experience. Because I think there's a good reason for writing things that are like that. But I guess because it just felt so drawn out, it felt like this book just beats a dead horse by the time you get to the end. I'm like, okay, I get it now. Can we just get to the end? Like, do we ever find out where this carnival, like what everything is? I guess that's my complaint. I'm still looking for how many pages this is. Okay, it's 265 pages. To me, that's a lot. To me, that's a lot for what the book is about, what the themes are, what the plot is, like how things are drawn to a close. It just felt like it could have been wrapped up a little bit faster than it was. And I get irritated with that stuff because, you know, like a movie or anything else that I'm enjoying, when it's good, but when you're a really good writer or just a really good like show producer or anything, you have to know when to stop. You have to know when to quit. I mean, come on, how many TV shows have been out there that so many of the fans are like, you should have ended the show like seasons ago because now it just sucks because you're just regurgitating stuff and none of it is new anymore. And now we're just tired of watching this. Just end it already. And so that's how I kind of feel about this book. It's not that it's not like the writing was bad. The writing was good. It felt very poetic, which is what they point out in the back of the book. It's like poetry. It's like dark poetry. But it felt so drawn out to me. It felt like, okay, this book could have been about half this size. Okay, maybe like just 3/4 of its size and been so much better. It just felt so drawn out to me. And that's a personal opinion. Maybe there are people out there who completely disagree with me and actually think that it should have been longer. But who knows? I mean, again, this is just a personal opinion. I have no say over whether this is an amazing literary creation or anything. This is just my opinion. And maybe you'll read this book and agree, or maybe you have already read this book and we'll see. But I kind of wanted to go into a little bit more of what happens in the book and kind of explain what I mean by everything, just a little bit. I don't want to drag on this video like the book. So I am going to go into spoilers right now. So if you don't want to see any spoilers, I do recommend closing out the video now. So if you are going to leave, thank you so much for watching and check out all my other videos. But now we're going to go into a little bit of the spoilers because there's a couple things I wanted to bring up. Things that I really enjoyed about the book. I have already stated why this is not my favorite book because I think it's drawn out too much, but there are things I really liked about this book. I really did. So obviously the two boys, the book is really just about them for sure. They are introduced in the prologue. The first boy is James Nightingale, which they call Jim because James and Jim. And then the other boy is William Halloway, and they're both 13 years old, but they are born a day apart. Yeah, and Jim is a day older than William. And they kind of, they're playing outside, the carnival rolls in, they're drawn to the carnival, that's kind of how things happen in the book. And obviously there's supernatural things involved because there was a salesman that came up to them in the very, I think, first chapter of the book. It had to have been. Yeah, the salesman. He comes up to them in the yard and he's trying to sell them stuff about lightning rods, basically. I don't know if they ever say his name. Do they ever give the salesman the name? It doesn't look like it. Yeah, said the man. So he's just the salesman of lightning rods. Later on in the book, we see that because he's just a traveling salesman, we see him walking along the street. And I'm trying to remember, was he younger and then older? It's so hard to remember. I read this book last year, so I've read so much since then. Oh, I remember. He went to the carnival to ask for something, and whatever he wished for turned him into basically a very, very miniature version of himself, like maybe 2 feet tall and pretty deformed. And he ends up traveling with the carnival seemingly by the end of the book for the rest of his life, because it doesn't really say. So like I said, up to your imagination and what you think happens. And that's kind of part of the whole supernatural thing, because how does a man who is maybe, 5'10" to 6'1" or so, all of a sudden go to a carnival and leave the carnival a very short, maybe 2-foot man and pretty deformed. I think there's like his face or something that's deformed and maybe a couple of his limbs. Something supernatural. But they never say what it is. And that's why this book is kind of metaphoric. It's poetry. It's not an exact like supernatural like fantasy book. It's more poetry than anything else. And that's not the thing I had a problem with. I had a problem with it. It felt very drawn out to me. And I thought that was really interesting that they made it very whimsical, but also very dark, because it's a carnival. It's supposed to be fun. And then, you know, you go and, hey, maybe you can get some youth regained, or you can make a wish, but it's coming with a consequence. Like I said, the monkey's paw. That's what it makes me think of. But the really cool part of the book to me was Jim's dad. I think it's Jim's dad. Because Jim's dad, or is it William's dad? I can't remember. No, it has to be William's dad. Yeah, it's William's dad. Yep. And they don't talk about his name because he's just mom and dad and the salesman, because I think the really good point of this book is it's from the boy's perspective. So it's just mom, dad, salesman. So the dad, William's dad, is to me the most interesting character in this book. He is in this book, in this time. I don't know specifically when this book is supposed to take place. I'm going to assume it's whenever the book was originally written, in a small town. And so however long ago that was, it wasn't the norm for men or women to have children at an older age. And so, okay, so it looks like the original book might have been written in 1962. I'm going based off the copyright. At least released in 1962. So yeah, it wasn't the norm to be older than maybe 30 when having kids back then. It doesn't specifically say how old William's dad is, but he was probably maybe in his 40s when William was born. And to that time, that was old. Nowadays, it's not. And that's kind of his whole arc in the book. He's always talking about how he was too old when he became a dad, and he couldn't play with his son and run around with him like most of the other dads could, because I'm guessing most of the other dads were under 30, so basically children themselves. And how he kind of missed out on a lot of things because he did things later in life. And the dad is a janitor at the library, and the book kind of ends with the dad becoming this big hero to William and having this beautiful moment between the two of them, and how, you know, William trusts his dad and his dad gets really involved in William's life, just not in the way that he had always expected. Because he always expected to be able to play ball, like play catch with his son. And, you know, he actually ends up basically kind of solving a weird town mystery with this carnival with his son, William. Because Jim goes off and Jim does the other thing, because he's a troublemaker. But that's not the point. The point is I'm talking about William and his dad. And I just really liked that part of the book, because I think even though today it's very common and normal to have children between your 30s and even even 40s, I think there's still a lot placed on age and missed opportunities and all that kind of stuff when you're getting older. And, you know, if he had Will when he was in his 40s or so, he's in his 50s now, and he has a teenage son, and most of the men in the town that have teenage sons are maybe starting to get into their 40s at the oldest. And I think it is kind of this, it's still relevant today as it was yesterday, even though the cultural shift has happened to having children at older ages. And I think it's really, I thought it was really, really cool how the dad wanted to be involved in William's life in such a physical way, but then he ends up getting involved in his life in an intellectual way, and ends up basically becoming the hero at the end of the book, with the whole, what's it called, carousel, because the carousel is the magic part of the carnival. Like I said, spoilers. And yeah, it kind of creates this new bond between them that the dad never thought he'd ever get to have. So I just really thought that was cool. I really liked that part of the book. I think that it's kind of just infinitely relevant, no matter what. The cultural shift now is very different, but I think that bonding with your kids has always been difficult because they're people. I mean, I don't have any children, but I mean, come on, I can't even imagine. It's like you raise, like as a baby, you know, if you don't adopt, or if you do, whatever, if you have a baby, like they're not like a full person yet. They can't talk. They don't have like super interesting likes or dislikes. Like they may like a toy or something, and you can bond with them on a somewhat kind of paternal, maternal level, whatever, but it's a little different. And then, you know, when they get older, it's so hard because you want to bond with them because you've raised them and supposedly you're still living with them, but it can be hard because they'll have different interests. And obviously there's usually the whole thing of kids find their parents embarrassing. I know I did. I think my entire teenage years, from like 12 to 17, 18, I found my parents extremely embarrassing. And so I think that it's kind of a universal truth that it can be hard to bond in a separate way with your children. And I think that's what I really loved about the book. Obviously, there's the whole regained youth aspect, especially with the dad, but the whole relationship with him and his son is kind of what stuck out to me the most. So that's how I feel about that book. I have mixed feelings, basically. I have something I didn't like about the book and something I really loved about the book. So that's all I have to say about that. I actually do recommend reading it. I think that reading books, like I've said before, from different perspectives is always a good thing, because there's so much more out there in the world than just what you experience. So highly recommend it. I really, really do. Even though I think it's a little drawn out, I'm sure there's a lot of people that disagree with me. Write in the comments if you've read it before and you agree or disagree. And then if you decide to read it after seeing this and then come back to comment, please comment below, because I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this, because I'm very glad I read it, but I do wish it was a little shorter. So honestly, let me know if you decide to read it or if you already have. So thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way through, like I said before, want to start posting more videos a week. Things are changing a lot in my life right now. If I do decide to kind of make more videos about my personal life, you'll find out what I'm talking about, but we'll see. I hope to post more videos per week, but for now, still just Friday mornings, every Friday morning at 8 a.m. I upload a new video. So subscribe to my channel and you'll get notified, because I don't think that time will change, but just in case for some reason it changes, you'll get notified as soon as it's uploaded regardless. And like this video if you enjoyed it. I hope that people enjoy what I talk about and my thoughts on the books that I read. And thank you all so much for watching. If you've subscribed to my channel, I cannot express how much I appreciate you. So I will see you all next week.